The patrol vessel Adamant drifted through the dark space near the expanse, running its usual scan of the region. Commander sat in her chair on the bridge, watching the stars through the main window. It was a quiet shift, like most shifts out here on the edge of known space. Nothing ever happened in this sector. That was about to change. "Commander," said her sensor officer, his voice suddenly sharp. "We have something. A ship just appeared on our screens. It came out of nowhere." Leaned forward. "Out of nowhere. Ships don't just appear. What kind of signature are we looking at?" "That's the thing, Commander. The signature matches something in our historical database. A ship called the Endurance. It was a colony ship that launched in 2247. It was declared lost with all hands 200 years ago." Felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard stories about the Endurance when she was young. Every spacer had. It was one of humanity's earliest attempts to send colonists beyond the core systems. The ship had carried over 3,000 people into the unknown. Then it had vanished near an uncharted anomaly, and no one ever saw it again. Until now. "Hail them," ordered. The communication officer worked his console. A moment later, the main screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was that of a woman in her 50s, with gray hair pulled back tight and deep lines around her eyes. She wore a uniform that looked almost like the ones in old photographs from 2 centuries ago, but cleaner, modified in ways that could not quite identify. "This is Captain Sierra Vance of the colony ship Endurance," the woman said. Her accent was strange, like standard filtered through generations of isolation. "We request permission to enter Earth space. We are coming home." Stared at the screen. "Captain Vance, the Endurance was lost 200 years ago. Where have you been?" Sierra Vance smiled, but there was something tired in her eyes. "That is a long story, Commander. The short version is that we found ourselves trapped in a place where time moved differently. We have been working to find our way back. Now we have succeeded. We want nothing more than to see Earth again." Made her decision. "You may follow us, Captain, but I will need to report this to command. They will have many questions for you." "I expected nothing less," Sierra replied. As the Adamant turned to escort the ancient ship, ordered a closer scan. What she saw made her breath catch. The Endurance had been modified beyond recognition. Its hull was covered in materials that her sensors could not identify. Its engines produced almost no emissions at all, yet it moved faster than anything in the Compact's fleet. The ship was impossibly advanced. Requested permission to board, and Sierra Vance granted it. An hour later stood in the Endurance's medical bay, watching a man regrow a severed arm in a tank of clear fluid. The process took 3 hours. 3 hours to grow back flesh, bone, nerves, and skin. The doctors in the Galactic Compact would have said it was impossible. How asked. Sierra stood beside her. "When we were trapped in that other place, we had nothing but time and necessity. The laws of physics there were more flexible, more willing to bend. We learned things. We built things. We had to, or we would have died." Walked through the ship in a daze. She saw engines that folded space in ways that made her head hurt to think about. She saw power reactors that ran forever without fuel. She saw weapons that could disable a warship without killing a single person aboard. Everything was beyond anything she had ever seen. The people of the Endurance were different too. They were the 8th generation born aboard the ship. None of them had ever seen Earth. None of them had ever walked on solid ground that was not the deck of a starship. But they spoke of Earth with longing, as if it were a paradise they had been promised since birth. News of the Endurance's return spread quickly. Within days, it was all anyone could talk about. The Galactic Compact's ruling council held emergency sessions. Admirals argued over what to do with the ship and its technology. Politicians debated whether the crew should be welcomed as heroes or treated as potential threats. The hegemony of Orion, humanity's greatest rival among the stars, also took notice. Their spies began gathering every scrap of information they could find. Their diplomats started preparing offers that might tempt the Endurance's crew to defect. And in the boardrooms of the great corporate syndicates, men and women in expensive suits calculated the value of what the Endurance carried. They made plans. Some of those plans were legal. Many were not. Sierra Vance knew none of this yet. She stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the stars pass by. Earth grew closer with each passing hour. She had never seen it except in photographs and recordings, but she had dreamed of it her whole life. Her grandmother had told her stories about blue oceans and green forests and cities that touched the clouds. "We are almost there," she said softly. Her first officer, a young man named, stood beside her. "Captain, I have been monitoring their communications. They are afraid of us. They see our technology and they want it. Some of them want it badly enough to do terrible things." Sierra nodded slowly. "I know. I hoped it would be different. I hoped we could simply come home and live in peace. But I always knew it might not be that simple." "What will we do?" Sierra thought for a long moment. "We will do what our ancestors did when they first set out for the stars. We will face the unknown with courage. We will hope for the best but prepare for the worst. And we will never forget who we are." The Endurance flew on through the darkness, carrying its miraculous technology and its weary crew toward a that had forgotten them. The galaxy was about to be shaken to its foundations, and humanity, as it always had, would be at the center of the storm. The Endurance arrived at Earth under the escort of 12 warships. Sierra Vance stood at her bridge window and looked down at the blue and white marble below. Tears ran down her face. She had seen this planet in dreams her entire life, and now it was real, hanging in space before her like a jewel. "It is beautiful," she whispered. But beauty did not protect her people from what came next. The Compact's officials were polite at first. They welcomed the crew of the Endurance with speeches and ceremonies. They assigned them comfortable quarters in a secure facility. They promised that Earth would be open to them soon as certain formalities were completed. The formalities stretched into weeks, then months. Sierra found herself in endless meetings with politicians who smiled too much and generals who did not smile at all. They had questions, so many questions, and beneath every question was the same demand, spoken or unspoken: "Give us your technology." "We want to share it," Sierra told them over and over. "We never intended to keep it secret. But you must understand, these systems cannot simply be. They were grown over generations. They require a deep understanding that takes years to develop." The officials did not like this answer. They brought in scientists to study the Endurance. The scientists confirmed what Sierra had said. The ship's technology was not based on blueprints or formulas. It was more like art than engineering. The power systems had been cultivated like living things. The engines had been shaped by intuition as much as calculation. Learning to build such things would require patience and time. The Compact's leaders did not have patience. They wanted results now. Some of them began to whisper that perhaps the crew of the Endurance was holding back on purpose. Perhaps they were not as friendly as they claimed to be. Meanwhile, the hegemony of Orion made its move. A delegation arrived at Earth, led by a smooth-talking diplomat named Saul. She requested a meeting with Sierra Vance, and the Compact could not refuse without creating an incident. Saul was charming and direct. "The hegemony offers you citizenship," she told Sierra. "Full citizenship with all rights and privileges. We will give your people land on one of our garden worlds. We will provide resources to help you build new lives. And we will not demand anything in return except friendship." Sierra listened carefully. "And the Compact's claims on our technology?" Smiled. "The hegemony does not recognize the Compact's claims. You are free people. You may share your knowledge with whoever you choose or with no one at all." The offer split the Endurance's community down the middle. Some of the crew wanted to accept. They were tired of being studied like specimens. They were tired of waiting for permission to walk on the planet their ancestors had left behind. The hegemony was offering them everything the compact had been slow to provide. Others refused to consider it. They had not traveled across 2 centuries to abandon humanity's government, no matter how flawed it was. Earth was their home, even if they had never set foot on it. They would not trade it for the comfort of a foreign power. Sira spent sleepless nights trying to hold her people together. She met with both factions. She listened to their fears and their hopes. She tried to find a path that would satisfy everyone, but the tension kept growing. Then the attack came. It happened in the middle of the night, ship time. A team of soldiers in black armor cut through the Endurance's hull using tools that should not have been able to penetrate the ship's defenses. They moved fast and silent, heading straight for the engine room. But the Endurance had not survived 2 centuries in a hostile dimension by being defenseless. The ship systems detected the intruders within seconds. Alarms rang through every corridor. Doors sealed themselves. Defensive fields activated. The soldiers found themselves trapped in a maze of shifting walls and blinding light. They fired their weapons, but the shots were absorbed by shields that appeared from nowhere. One by one, they were neutralized, knocked unconscious by pulses of energy that left no lasting harm. But not before 3 of Sira's people died defending the engine room, 2 engineers and a young woman who had been training to be a pilot. They were killed by weapons fire before the ship's defenses could stop the attackers. Sira stood over their bodies in the medical bay, her face carved from stone. "Who sent them?" she asked. "Had been interrogating the captured soldiers. They will not say. Their equipment has no markings. Their communications were encrypted with codes we cannot break. But the technology they used was compact military, modified to be untraceable." "So it could have been anyone," Sira said. "The compact, the hegemony, the corporations, anyone with enough money and desperation." "Yes," admitted, "we may never know for certain." Sira looked at the faces of the dead. She had known all 3 of them since they were children. She had watched them grow up, learn, dream of seeing Earth. Now they would never see it. Something hardened inside her. For months she had tried to play by their rules. She had been patient and cooperative. She had hoped that good faith would be returned with good faith. But she had been naive. As long as the Endurance remained a prize to be won, her people would never be safe. "Call a meeting," she told. "All department heads, all senior crew. We need to make a decision." The meeting lasted for hours. There were arguments and tears and moments when Sira thought her community would tear itself apart. But in the end, they reached a consensus. They would not give their technology to the compact alone. They would not give it to the hegemony alone. They would not sell it to the corporations. They would give it to everyone. "If we give it to one group, that group becomes powerful and others become desperate," Sira explained. "The fighting will never end. But if we give it to everyone at once, no one has an advantage. The playing field stays level." "They will hate us for it," someone said. "Some will," Sira agreed. "But others will thank us. And either way, our people will be safe. No one will have a reason to attack us if the prize they were fighting for is already gone." She stood before her crew, these descendants of explorers who had never stopped exploring. "We came home hopping to find peace. Instead, we found the same old games of power and greed. But we are not without power ourselves. We can change the game. We can make sure that no one group controls the future. We can give humanity a choice." The vote was close, but it passed. The Endurance would broadcast its technical archives on every open channel in the galaxy. The knowledge would be free for anyone to access, free for anyone to learn. The consequences would be enormous, and they would be faced together. The broadcast began at midnight, Earth time. Every communication channel in the galaxy suddenly carried the same signal. It was the complete technical archive of the Endurance, 200 years of discoveries compressed into a data stream that would take years to fully decode. It went everywhere at once, unstoppable and irreversible. The reaction was immediate chaos. On Earth, the stock markets crashed within hours. Energy companies watched their values drop to nothing as traders realized that fusion reactors would soon be relics of the past. Military contractors saw their contracts become worthless overnight. Fortunes built over generations vanished between one sunrise and the next. In the hegemony of Orion, the admirals who had planned to use stolen technology against the Compact found their advantage erased. The Compact now had access to the same knowledge. So did every colony world, every mining station, every ship in the void. The careful balance of power that had held for a century was suddenly uncertain. Some leaders called Cira Vance a terrorist. They said she had destabilized the galaxy, threatened peace, endangered billions of lives. They demanded that she be arrested, tried, executed for her crimes. Others called her a liberator. They said she had broken the chains that kept humanity divided, given every world the chance to build its own future. They celebrated in the streets of 100 colonies, cheering for the crew of the Endurance. But the technology did not implement itself. The archives were vast and complex, filled with principles that would take years to understand. A new generation of scientists and engineers began the slow work of translation. They gathered in universities and workshops across hundreds of worlds, sharing their progress, building on each other's discoveries. Some succeeded faster than others. A small colony on the outer rim figured out the basics of the new power systems within a year. Suddenly, they had energy to spare, more than they could ever use. They went from struggling to survive to building new cities almost overnight. An oppressed mining world in hegemony space learned to build the defensive shields. Their overlords sent ships to crush the rebellion that followed. The ships were turned back by barriers of light that nothing could penetrate. For the first time in generations, the miners were free. Power shifted in unexpected directions. Old empires found their authority challenged by worlds that had always been weak. New alliances formed as former rivals realized they needed each other to make sense of the new technology. The map of human civilization began to change. And through it all, the Endurance remained at Earth, waiting. Cira Vance knew they would come for her eventually. She had hurt too many powerful people. She had stolen their future and given it away. They would want revenge, even if revenge served no purpose anymore. It was human nature. She did not have to wait long. The fleet that assembled in Earth orbit was the largest ever gathered. Ships from the Compact, marked with official insignia but crewed by men who answered to corporation boards. Ships from the hegemony, sent by admirals who had been humiliated by the broadcast. Mercenary vessels hired by syndicates that had lost everything. They came from every direction, a coalition of the desperate and the furious. Their commander sent a message to the Endurance. Surrender your ship and your crew. You will face justice for what you have done. Cira watched the fleet on her screens. There were over 100 ships out there, armed with the best weapons the old technology could provide. Against them, she had one ship, 200 years old, crewed by people who had never fired a shot in anger. Captain said quietly, "What are your orders?" Cira smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was steel in it too. "We came home hopping to find peace. They gave us 3 deaths and a demand for surrender. I think it is time to show them what 2 centuries of survival taught us." She pressed a button on her console. "All stations, activate defensive systems, full engagement protocols. Remember what we learned in the fold, we do not have to kill to win." The fleet attacked. 100 ships opened fire at once, pouring enough energy to vaporize a small moon toward the ancient colony ship. The void filled with light. The Endurance did not move. Shields that the attackers could not understand absorbed every shot. The energy was not destroyed but redirected, channeled into the ship's own systems. With each blast, the Endurance grew stronger. Then it struck back. Pulses of focused energy lanced out from the Endurance, targeting the attacking ships one by one. But these were not weapons of destruction. They were weapons of mercy. Each pulse overloaded a ship's systems without damaging its hull. Engines died. Weapons went dark. Life support continued to function, but nothing else. One by one, the attacking ships went silent. They drifted in the void, helpless but unharmed. Their crews remained alive, trapped in vessels that would not respond to any command. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, not a single person had died. 100 warships had been reduced to floating metal, their crews alive and wondering what had just happened. The Endurance hung in the void, unmarked, untouched, its lights still burning bright. Sierra opened a channel to Earth and to every listening station in the galaxy. Her face appeared on screens across human space, tired but determined. "We did not come home to conquer," she said. "We came home to share what we had learned. We gave you our knowledge freely, asking nothing in return. Some of you responded with greed and violence. Today we showed you that we could have destroyed you if we had wished, but destruction was never our purpose." She paused, looking into the camera as if she could see every person watching across the stars. "The Endurance is leaving now. We are returning to the place that shaped us, the dimension where we learned that survival depends on cooperation, not conflict. The door will remain open for anyone who wishes to follow and learn, but we will not force our ways upon you. Humanity must choose its own path." She smiled, and for a moment she looked like any grandmother saying goodbye to children she loved but could not protect forever. "Use what we have given you wisely. Build a future worth living in, and perhaps someday we will meet again." The transmission ended. The Endurance's engines came to life, producing a glow that sensors could not explain. The ship began to move, accelerating in ways that everything the watching scientists thought they knew about physics. Then space itself seemed to fold around the ancient vessel. For a heartbeat, the Endurance existed in two places at once, both in Earth orbit and somewhere impossibly far away. Then the fold collapsed, and the ship was gone. In the silence that followed, the galaxy tried to understand what had just happened. Wars would be fought over the new technologies. Old empires would fall. New powers would rise. Nothing would ever be the same again. But scattered across 1,000 worlds, people were already building. Engineers puzzled over the archives, making slow progress toward understanding. Scientists shared their discoveries across borders that had once been closed. Children dreamed of ships that could fold space and healing machines that could regrow lost limbs. On the outer rim, the colony that had figured out the power systems began sending teachers to neighboring worlds. On the mining planet, the freed workers started planning their own journey into deep space. In universities and workshops, in garages and laboratories, humanity reached for a future that had seemed impossible just months before. The Endurance was gone, but what it had given remained. A seed had been planted in human civilization, and it was already beginning to grow. There would be struggles ahead, challenges and setbacks and moments when all seemed lost. But humanity had faced such moments before and had always found a way forward. Somewhere in another dimension, Sierra Vance stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the strange stars that had been her sky for 2 centuries. Behind her, her crew prepared for whatever came next. They had done what they had set out to do. They had gone home, shared their gifts, and shown humanity what was possible. Now they would explore again, as their ancestors had explored before them. They would push into the unknown, discover new wonders, face new dangers, and if humanity ever needed them again, they would return. The ship was gone. The future it had planted was just beginning to bloom, and across the galaxy, human beings looked up at the stars and dared to dream of what might come next. They were only human, after all, and humans had always been at their best when reaching for the impossible.